The storm came in hard and fast, sweeping across the Colorado foothills like it had something to prove. Lightning carved the sky in jagged streaks, and rain pounded the windshields of every patrol car in Boulder County. Emergency services were already stretched thin with fallen trees, flooded backroads, and power outages. Officer Jamie Keller wiped condensation from the inside of her cruiser's window and exhaled slowly. Her partner, Rico Montoya, sat in the driver's seat chewing gum like it was a substitute for patience. Between them sat Luna and Thor, two of the department's most trusted K9s. Thor, a sturdy black and tan German shepherd with eyes like steel set perfectly still. Luna, a smaller Belgian Malinois, paced the back seat with nervous energy. "Dispatch says there's a distress ping coming from a cabin near Hollow Creek Trail," Rico said, glancing down at the laptop bolted to the dash. No voice call, no name. Just a single panic signal sent 5 hours ago, probably a false alarm considering the storm. "Or someone out there really needs help and no signals getting through," Jamie replied, tugging her rain jacket tighter. The gravel road leading to Hollow Creek was more mud than stone. Branches littered the path, and they had to stop twice to clear debris. By the time they reached the trailhead, the downpour had softened into a drizzle, but a thick, eerie mist had settled in the trees. That's when Luna started whining. High-pitched and agitated. "Hey," Jamie said, turning in her seat. "Easy, girl, we're almost there." But Luna wouldn't calm down. She kept turning her head, ears twitching, eyes scanning the forest behind them, not the direction of the cabin. Thor began growling low in his throat, then pulled against his leash hard enough to make Rico grunt. "They're acting like there's something nearby," Rico muttered. "But it's the wrong way. Could be a coyote. Or a bear," Jamie offered. But deep down she knew better. These weren't ordinary dogs. They were trained for search and rescue, narcotics, protection. Every movement they made was purposeful, and they had never misread a situation. Not once. Still, orders were orders. Jamie tapped her comm. "Dispatch Unit 4K9 responding to Hollow Creek alert." Trailhead reached, proceeding to suspected cabin location. As they advanced up the path, the dogs grew even more agitated. Luna barked twice, sharp, urgent, and tried to lunge to the right, away from the trail entirely. Thor followed, snarling, and straining against Rico's grip. "Whoa!" Rico said, digging his heels into the mud. "Thor! Heel!" The German shepherd didn't listen. Neither did Luna. They pulled harder, barking in tandem, almost howling now. "Something seriously wrong," Jamie said. "They never behave like this." "We're supposed to check the cabin first," Rico reminded her. "We veer off without clearance and it's our asses." Luna yanked her leash again, then broke free, sprinting into the mist-covered woods. Thor gave one final tug and slipped his collar, disappearing into the same direction with incredible speed. Jamie and Rico exchanged a look, conflicted, alarmed, adrenaline rising. "We can call it in, wait for backup," Rico offered weakly, but his voice betrayed doubt. He already knew they wouldn't. Jamie was already moving. No time. They chased after the dogs, crashing through wet undergrowth and tangled limbs, their boots sloshing in the saturated ground. The forest seemed darker now, heavier, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Somewhere ahead, a bark echoed. Then, another short, urgent. Jamie's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what they were running toward. All she knew was this. The dogs had broken years of training to run into that forest. And something deep inside her gut screamed that if they didn't follow, someone was going to die. As they disappeared deeper into the trees, the world behind them, the rules, the protocol, the cabin, vanished like smoke in the storm. Something else was calling, and the dogs had already answered. The further they ran, the more the world warped around them. Branches scraped their arms and tangled in their legs. Every breath was soaked with pine, wet bark, and adrenaline. But it wasn't fear that pushed them forward. It was urgency. Something was wrong out there, and the dogs knew it long before. They did. Thor's bark echoed ahead, followed by a low growl that twisted Jamie's stomach. Luna yipped twice, sharp and high. That wasn't a sound of aggression, it was alarm. "They're not chasing anything," Rico panted beside her. "They're warning us." Jamie's flashlight cut through the mist in jittery swipes. The beam caught nothing but trees, brush, and dripping moss. And then, there, a flash of tan fur ahead. Luna turned back toward them briefly, eyes wide, and tail stiff. Then she vanished over a slope. "Luna!" Jamie shouted, barely slowing down. They crested the rise and found themselves on a steep incline. It wasn't a trail, it was a jagged, root-studded slope leading into a narrow ravine. Both officers slid partway down before catching themselves against a mossy rock. "I swear if this is just a raccoon den or something," Rico started, but then his voice died mid-sentence. Jamie followed his gaze. At the bottom of the ravine, nestled between a fallen log and a cluster of thorny underbrush, lay a man, a real human being. His arms were wrapped tightly around a thick tree root, as if he'd clung to it for dear life. His clothes were ripped to shreds. One shoe was missing. Blood stained his shirt and soaked the dirt around him. His face was bruised, pale, and slick with sweat. One eye was swollen shut, but somehow he was still breathing. Luna sat beside him, nuzzling his face gently with her snout. Thor stood protectively near his feet, muscles tense, eyes scanning the tree line. Jamie's heart slammed against her chest. "Oh my God!" "Is he alive?" Rico called down. She slid the rest of the way and dropped beside the man, pressing, 2 fingers to his throat. "Pulse is weak, thready, but he's still here." The man stirred, letting out a faint, raspy noise that might have been a groan. Jamie leaned close. "Hey, can you hear me? You're safe. You're going to be okay." His lips moved. A whisper escaped, dry, broken. "Help! Still out there." Jamie froze. "What do you mean? Who's still out there?" But his eyes rolled back before she could get another word. Rico slid down behind her, already speaking into his radio. "Unit 4K9 requesting immediate medevac. To GPS ping. We have an injured male. Severe trauma, possible blood loss, possible exposure." As he rattled off coordinates, Jamie surveyed the area. No bag, no ID, no flashlight. This man had no reason to be here. And he wasn't just lost. He looked like he'd been hunted. Thunder rumbled overhead, low and long, like a growl from the sky. A sudden snap of a branch made them both whip around. Thor stood still, ears perked, eyes locked on a patch of thick brush above them. Jamie raised her voice. "Hello? This is the Boulder County Sheriff's Department. If anyone's out there, identify yourself now." Silence. Then from the woods came the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps, barely audible but unmistakable. Luna growled and moved in front of the man, body low, ready to pounce. Thor took 2 steps forward, snarling now. Jamie's hand went to her holster. Rico's voice was tight. "Something's watching us. They couldn't leave. They couldn't run." Not with a man unconscious at their feet. And then, just as quickly as it came, the sound disappeared. Gone. Jamie turned back to the man. His breathing was faint but steady. Whatever hell he had crawled out of, they'd found him in time. But she knew in her gut this wasn't over. They'd stumbled into something bigger, and now they weren't alone. As the rescue team loaded into the SUV, Jamie gave a final glance at Thor and Luna. The 2 dogs, usually obedient and steady, were restless, pacing, noses twitching, eyes fixed on the forest ahead. Jamie felt a strange pull herself, like the dogs were sensing something unseen. The dispatcher's message was clear. The distress signal came from the North Ridge, a dangerous area known for cliffs and unstable ground. The protocol was strict, no deviations allowed. The dogs were ordered to stay on the marked trail, but as the team drove closer, Thor suddenly jerked his head toward a dense thicket off the side of the road. Without warning, he lunged from the vehicle, dragging Jamie's leash taut. Luna followed. Instantly, ears pinned back, focused. "Thor, Luna, hold!" Jamie shouted, but the dogs ignored the commands. Jamie cursed under her breath but didn't pull back. Instead, she let the dogs lead, knowing their instincts were rarely wrong. The team reluctantly followed as Thor and Luna disappeared into the thick forest. Branches scraped their faces, roots twisted underfoot, but the dogs pressed forward with a fierce determination. Minutes passed, then hours. No sign of the distress signal's source. The GPS readout was getting weaker, and the other officers grumbled about wasted time. Suddenly, Luna's sharp bark broke the tension. Jamie pushed through a thicket and froze. There, crumpled against the base of a twisted pine, was a man. His clothes were torn and bloodied. His face was pale and coated with dirt. His breathing was shallow but steady. "Carter Briggs," Jamie whispered as she checked his wrist ID. The man's eyes fluttered open. "Help!" he rasped. The team quickly called for medical backup. Thor and Luna stayed close, their eyes never... Leaving Carter, Jamie knelt beside him. "You're safe now, we've got you." But Carter's weak voice warned, "He's still out there, watching." Jamie's heart pounded. Who was he? And what had Carter been running from? The dog's defiance had saved a life, but the mystery was just beginning. The forest held its breath. Jamie stood frozen, her hand hovering over her weapon, eyes scanning the brush. Thor's growls grew deeper, chest vibrating like a warning drum. Luna's ears were rigid. Her entire body pointed toward the darkness above them like a taut arrow. No more footsteps. No voices. Just rainwater dripping from leaves. "Whatever it was, it's gone," Rico whispered, though his voice held no confidence. "I don't believe that for a second," Jamie muttered. The man groaned again, pulling their attention. His lips were cracked, his skin deathly pale, but his eyes fluttered open. A whisper pushed out of him. "Not safe, he's still close. Watching." Jamie bent closer. "Who? Who's watching?" He shivered violently. "He was going to bury me, thought I was dead, not safe." Suddenly, Thor barked so loudly it echoed through the ravine. Luna snapped her head around, growling. Jamie barely turned before she heard. It, the unmistakable snarl of a predator. From the upper slope leaping out of the brush came a flash of movement, yellow eyes, coiled muscle, teeth, a mountain lion. It sprang directly at Jamie. Everything happened in a blur. Thor launched upward, with force that sent dirt flying. Mid-air, he collided with the cougar, their bodies slamming together in a thud that shook the ground. The big cat screeched and twisted violently, claws slashing. Thor didn't let go. He clamped onto the cougar's neck, biting down. Luna was already airborne, diving into the fight. Her jaws found the cougar's leg as she dragged it sideways. Trying to topple it, Jamie drew her pistol but couldn't get a clear shot. "Hold your fire," Rico yelled. "Too close to Thor." The fight was primal, ferocious. Snarls and yelps filled the air. The mountain lion thrashed wildly, trying to fling Thor off. A paw caught Thor's side, sharp claws raking across his ribs. The dog yelped, but didn't release. Luna bit harder, forcing the predator off balance. Jamie finally found an opening. One. Shot. Then two. The cougar shrieked and bolted into the trees, crashing through the brush, wounded and limping. The growls faded into the forest until there was only silence again. Jamie rushed forward. "Thor! Luna!" Thor stood but staggered slightly, his flank torn and bleeding. Luna barked protectively, nudging his chest and licking his wounds. Jamie dropped to her knees beside Thor. "You saved my life," she breathed. "Let me patch him," Rico said, pulling his trauma kit. "We need that medevac yesterday." The man on the ground, weak as he was, managed a tearful laugh. They knew it was here." Jamie nodded slowly, still trying to process what had just happened. "They didn't break orders. They broke protocol to save us." Rico worked fast, pressing gauze into Thor's wounds and wrapping him in a makeshift sling. Luna sat close, whining softly, as if urging them to hurry. The medevac arrived 10 minutes later. As paramedics loaded the man into the helicopter, he gripped Jamie's wrist with surprising strength. "It's not just the woods," he rasped. "He put me here, thought I was dead. If he knows I'm still alive..." The words stuck in his throat as he lost consciousness again. Jamie's mind raced. This wasn't a case of a hiker gone missing or a random animal attack. This was something darker. Someone had left this man here to die, and if the dogs hadn't led them off the planned route, he would have. And now whoever had tried to kill him might know he'd survived. As the chopper blades roared overhead and the man was lifted away into the stormy sky, Jamie looked at Thor, bloodied but standing tall, and Luna beside him, alert and defiant. "They broke every command we gave them," Rico said. Jamie's eyes stayed on the trees, and thank God they did. The morning after the attack, the forest felt calmer, but Jamie knew better. The sun pierced through the mist now, casting golden streaks through the pines, but something beneath it all felt wrong, as if the trees had seen too much the night before and weren't ready to let go. Thor rested at the station's K9 recovery unit with stitches and pain meds, but he'd live. Luna hadn't left his side once, even sleeping curled beside him. Jamie had barely slept at all. The man they'd rescued was still unconscious in the ICU, listed under John Doe. No ID, no phone, no wallet, just bruises, gashes, and a story. That hadn't been told yet. Something doesn't sit right, Jamie told Rico as they sat in the sheriff's office later that afternoon. He said someone tried to bury him, that he wasn't just lost, he was left there. And that mountain. Lion! Rico shook his head. It didn't come out of nowhere. Those dogs led us straight into a predator's territory, like they knew it was guarding something. Jamie pulled up the topographic maps of the area they'd searched. Look at this, she said, pointing to a shaded ridge behind the ravine, where they found the man. There's supposed to be a cabin here, some emergency ranger post. Rico squinted. That's not where we were headed when the distress signal came in. Exactly, she zoomed in. The signal came from north, of this spot. But when the dogs pulled us away from the trail, they led us southwest, toward this cabin, the one that shouldn't even be active anymore. She made a call to dispatch. Get me ranger logs from Hollow Creek. I want to know who was last assigned. To that cabin. While they waited, Jamie sifted through missing persons reports. It didn't take long to find something that made her blood go cold. A man named Carter Briggs, age 34, backpacker, reported missing by his sister 2 weeks ago after never returning from a solo trip through Hollow Creek Trail. He matched the man they'd rescued almost exactly. Same dark hair, same scar on the temple. What if that was him, Jamie said, showing the file to Rico. What if Carter stumbled onto something he shouldn't have out there, and someone tried to make sure he didn't come back? Just then the call from dispatch came through. There hasn't been an active ranger assigned to that cabin in over a year, the voice on the line said. It was marked condemned due to structural damage. All gear and supplies were removed. It's not supposed to be used anymore. Jamie hung up slowly. So why did that distress signal come from nearby? And more importantly, who sent it? Luna padded into the room quietly, her collar jingling. She sat down beside Jamie and rested her head on the officer's boot, looking up at her with those focused, alert eyes. Even without Thor, she was ready to work. Jamie stood up. Let's go check that cabin. They returned to Hollow Creek with Luna leading the way. This time they hiked silently, guns loaded, senses sharp. Luna didn't hesitate. She moved with certainty, tail low, body tight, ears alert. She wasn't sniffing for a scent. She was tracking a memory. When they reached the supposed abandoned cabin, both officers froze. The door had been recently opened. Muddy boot prints trailed through the clearing. The hinges creaked in the breeze. Jamie drew her weapon. Rico circled to the back, eyes scanning every window. Inside, the cabin was stripped bare, except for one thing. A shovel, half buried in a pile of disturbed dirt in the corner, and a blood-stained tarp stuffed into a crate. Jamie's stomach turned. She crouched beside the dirt. Someone had started digging, not to hide something, but to bury it. Jamie didn't touch the tarp. She didn't need to. The coppery scent of dried blood, still pungent after days or maybe longer, said more than enough. Beside it, the shovel's wooden handle was slick from fresh use. Mud clung to the blade. Rico entered from the back door, his gun drawn, eyes wide. Tell me that's not what I think it is, he muttered. Jamie rose slowly, her voice low. Looks like someone started digging a second grave and left in a hurry. They stood in silence, taking in the grim, still scene. Then Luna growled low in her throat. Jamie turned sharply. What is it, girl? Luna crept toward the wall. There, hidden beneath a cracked floorboard, was a duffel bag, wedged in tight. Jamie pulled it free, unzipped it cautiously. Inside were a phone, an ID, and a bloodied map. The ID confirmed it, Carter Briggs. And the phone, still barely powered. Jamie flipped through the photos. One made her breath catch. It was a selfie of Carter, smiling, standing beside another man, older, maybe in his late 40s, graying hair, the E. Same face they'd seen in one of the ranger cabin logs Jamie had skimmed earlier. Rico looked over her shoulder. That guy? I've seen him before. Jamie swiped to the next photo. Same man, but this time he was standing beside a pickup truck with government tags, U.S. Forestry Services. Rico pulled out his phone, searched something quickly, and turned the screen toward her. Name's Paul Langston, retired field ranger. He was supposedly reassigned after a disciplinary action last year. Something about off-grid violations. He vanished from internal records 4 months ago. Jamie's pulse quickened. He's not just living out here. He's using this cabin. Maybe even impersonating a ranger to get access to the woods. And Carter must have found out, Rico said grimly. Whatever he saw, it nearly got him killed. Suddenly, Luna barked once, sharp and high. Her body stiffened near the window. Jamie rushed to her side, scanning the forest. Movement. 50 yards away, a figure retreating fast between the trees. A flash of green, ranger-style jacket. The sun glinted off something metallic slung across his shoulder. Rico swung his rifle to his chest. You see that? Jamie was already moving. Let's go. They took off into the forest, Luna bounding, ahead like a missile. The man ran through the trees with the skill of someone who knew the terrain well. But Luna was faster, closing the distance, barking to signal his position. Then the man made a mistake. He turned back to look, just for a second. But it was enough. He tripped over a root and went sprawling into the underbrush. By the time he rolled, onto his back, Jamie had her gun trained on him. Don't move, she shouted. Rico flanked him with practiced ease. Hands where we can see them. The man raised his hands slowly. His face was scratched, dirt-streaked, and his mouth twisted in something between a snarl and a smirk. Well, he said calmly, guess the dogs earned their kibble. Jamie stared at him, heart pounding. You're Paul Langston. He didn't deny it. He wasn't supposed to live, he said casually, nodding in the direction of the ravine. Carter. He saw too much. Got nosy. Rico cuffed him hard and yanked him to his feet. You tried to bury a man alive. Langston chuckled. He was practically dead already. I just let nature finish the job. Jamie's fists clenched, but she held back. Barely. You used your ranger status to gain access to restricted cabins. You lured people out here. Why? Langston tilted his head, eyes glinting. Some people like the quiet. Some... Like what? You can get away with it. Jamie turned away, bile rising in her throat. The case had just cracked wide open, and it wasn't over, because Carter Briggs had survived, and now he could name names. Back at the station, Paul Langston sat in interrogation room B, his eyes cold and still. He was eerily composed, hands folded on the table, a smirk playing at his cracked lips. His ranger jacket had been confiscated, revealing a long sleeve, thermal shirt smeared with weeks of forest grime. Jamie stared at him from behind the two-way mirror, fists clenched. She wanted answers. But more than that, she wanted justice. Rico stepped into the room first. Water? He asked flatly. Langston shrugged. You offering or threatening? Jamie entered, closing the door behind her. Luna, for once, stood quietly, at her side, not growling but watching. Langston's eyes flicked to the dog. She's smarter than half the people I've met. Probably saw through me before you did. Jamie ignored the jab. Let's start with Carter Briggs. You tried to bury him alive. Langston's smile faltered for just a second. I thought I'd finished the job. Why? She demanded. Why him? Why out there? Langston leaned, back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. You ever spend enough time in silence, you stop seeing people as real. Carter? He stumbled onto something he shouldn't have. What was he doing in the woods? Rico asked. Langston snorted. Trying to help people. Typical bleeding heart. Thought he was going to document illegal poaching, maybe even write some expose. He had no idea what he was stepping into. Jamie's voice lowered. You weren't poaching. Langston looked her dead in the eye. No, I was disposing. Rico froze. Disposing what? Langston said nothing. Jamie pressed. How many? His silence stretched. Then he looked right at Luna. She found the tarp, didn't she? Jamie's heart thudded hard. Are there more? Langston nodded once. 3. Names. Don't know them all, he said, tilting his head. Only met two, hikers, campers, vulnerable, off-grid. One was a runaway, the kind no one goes looking for. Jamie couldn't believe what she was hearing. He didn't even flinch. No remorse, just cold facts. Why? She whispered. Langston's smile returned. You ever spend 20 years keeping hikers safe, watching people destroy trails, cut trees, dump trash? One day I realized I liked the forest better without them. Jamie's stomach turned. That doesn't explain Carter, Langston scoffed. He was the first one smart enough to figure it out. He found the disturbed ground behind the cabin, took pictures, tried to confront me. I offered to walk him back to safety, and then took him. The long way. You beat him, dumped him in the ravine, and hoped the animals finished the rest, Rico said darkly. Langston just nodded. Jamie stood suddenly, chair scraping back. Where are the other bodies? He raised a brow. You'll need your dogs. Again, Jamie didn't hesitate. She stood, and within minutes she and Luna were headed back out. This time Thor, bandaged but standing, joined her, tail low but eager. Whatever strength he had left, he was willing to give. The next 24 hours were brutal. With Langston's vague directions, they searched the deeper forest, well beyond marked trails. Finally, Luna let out a bark near a thicket of moss-covered stones. Thor moved beside her, whining. The ground was soft, too soft. They dug carefully. What they found confirmed everything. 3 shallow graves. Skeletal remains wrapped in decaying fabric. One backpack with ID still intact. Leah Renshaw, a 19-year-old, missing for nearly 8 months. Another had a hiker's watch, still ticking. The third, nothing. No clues. Each grave had been expertly hidden by someone who knew the forest like the back of his hand. When Jamie stood over them, she didn't cry. She knelt beside Thor and Luna, petting their heads. You two. You didn't just save Carter. You brought them home. Thor nuzzled into her arm. Luna licked her palm once, then sat silently, her job not done, but understood. Paul Langston had buried the truth deep, but 2 dogs dug it out. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows over the freshly uncovered graves. Jamie stood silent, watching as forensic teams worked with quiet reverence, uncovering the last traces of those who'd been lost too long. The forest was still, as if holding its breath, waiting for justice. Thor and Luna lay nearby, exhausted but alert, their eyes reflecting the fading light. Jamie knelt beside them, gratitude swelling in her chest. Without their defiance, without their courage, the truth might have stayed buried forever. The following days were a whirlwind. Carter Briggs finally regained consciousness in the hospital. Weak but determined, he gave his statement. How Langston had lured him off the trail, assaulted him, and left him to die. The images on his phone, the evidence from the cabin, and the newly uncovered graves made the case airtight. Langston was charged with multiple counts: attempted murder, manslaughter, illegal disposal of bodies, and impersonation of a government official. The community breathed a sigh of relief, but Jamie knew the darkness never truly vanished. One morning, while reviewing the case files, Jamie received an anonymous note slipped under her office door. It was a single sentence scrawled hastily. Ahanam. Found one. There are others. Her heart raced. She looked up at Thor and Luna, who were napping quietly but always alert. That's all it ever is, Jamie murmured. One step closer, one truth at a time. Weeks later, at a ceremony honoring the K9 team, Jamie spoke before a gathered crowd of officers, volunteers, and townsfolk. These 2 dogs didn't just break protocol. They saved a life and uncovered a nightmare. Their instincts led us where technology and orders failed. She looked down at Thor and Luna, tails wagging softly. In their refusal to follow orders blindly, they reminded us what it means to protect, to fight, and to never give up. As the applause echoed, Jamie felt a call on her phone. It was Carter. Jamie. His voice was steady but weary. There's something else, something I saw but didn't understand. Langston wasn't working alone. There are others, people who helped him cover up what happened here. Jamie's fingers tightened around the phone. Two dogs had defied orders. One man had clung to life, but the forest still held its secrets, and Jamie knew the fight wasn't over. She looked down at Thor and Luna. "Ready?" They barked once. Together, they disappeared into the trees, chasing the next truth, guided by the loyalty of two dogs who refused to be ignored.